Welcome everyone to this Cortado Cuppa Coffee Podcast with me, your host Tom Dillon. This has been recorded live at our Tin Pot Mobile Studio and broadcast around the world. Next in our series of Cortados, little shares, little mini shares from some of the community, we've got the lovely Julie Talbot, who's been on a few times, and I'm delighted to have her back because she's she's always got exciting things to say, and so it's a pleasure to say hello to Julie. How are you, and what have you got for us?
No pressure, Tom. Today's might be rubbish. I might have nothing to say. So today I was thinking of talking about no matter where we are, like on our property journey. I know the two Cortados that you've had so far, everyone's been talking about their property journey. So no matter where we are, we're generally either improving something that we've already done and getting better at it, or we're kind of like wanting to start something new. And it's kind of like it's how best to do that, I suppose, that I wanted to talk about, and what I've learned, because what I kind of found was for years, like 7 years specifically, for 7 years, I knew that I wanted to do more in property, but I did nothing. So like I was thinking like I want to do more in property, and I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I knew nothing about, I did nothing about it. I just like thought about it and had this goal, but the gap felt too big. We were living in Abu Dhabi. And my husband had an expat job. We had a young family. I had all these excuses and reasons why, like, I wasn't doing anything. Looks great. Sorry, my daughter's just come in and pointed at something for me. So I had always like excuses of things that I was telling myself to kind of like justify why I was doing nothing. But then I had you sort of get a jolt one day, don't you? And I realised that I needed to close the gap. There was this gap between where I was and where I wanted to go and where I wanted to get to. And I just thought, I've got to close the gap. I've got to start on this property or restart on this property journey. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, really, because there's lots of ways that we can close the gap, so that we can, get the knowledge or get the confidence or whatever it is to kind of like get to our goal. So there's kind of like been various examples, and some of them are property related that I'm going to talk about, and some of them that aren't property related, where I've kind of like taken different types of help, because there's no right or wrong way I've found to like close the gap to help us get to where we want to be. It really depends on lots of different factors. So what I've tended to find in some parts of my property journey, I've ended up taking on guides or mentors, and that's kind of, this is why this sort of like topic came to me today. Just to go off on a tangent, we're in Nepal at the moment, and we're in the kind of like in the mountains, and there's lots of trails here. And when you go on trails, you can take guides with you because you don't know where you're going. You're going into the mountains. You're in the wilderness, right? And I would have assumed when we were coming to somewhere like this that we would have needed to take a guide to take us to where we wanted to go, aka the top of the mountain. But we've been here before. We came here 10 years ago, and this time we're here, we actually realised that we don't need a guide because we've been here before. There is an actual road, there's a path that we've stepped on before and that is still there. So we kind of feel quite comfortable, but I realised that does also seem quite bold at the same time, that we're going to go on a 5-day trek with young children on our own. But to us, like, because we've been here before, we feel like we don't need a guide this time. So that was kind of like, that's the background that sort of gave me this idea today. So some sort of like points in my property kind of journey where I've had a big gap. Like I say, when I had this like 7-year kind of like pause, there was that point when I took on a guide and a mentor at that point, just to help me kind of like figure out the path. There was another point in my property journey when I was avoiding doing something, and I've been avoiding doing it for years, actually, not quite 7 years, but I've been avoiding it, and that was getting planning permission. And I was telling myself that, I was strategically not getting planning permission because, I didn't want to and all this. But really what it came down to was I didn't understand it, and I didn't want to get caught doing something that I didn't understand. And then I realised that I was avoiding looking at lots of schemes because I didn't want to get planning. And I realised that maybe my confidence had got a bit better because I'd done enough projects. But I realised that I had to kind of like shake this planning permission demon. Like, it was almost like a wall that was in front of me, and I kept going like different routes and in different directions. And I was like, okay, we've got to like get over this wall and get onto the side. So that was another point in my property journey where I decided to take on a guide, take on a mentor, and you know, Tom and Chris, that's when I ended up working with you guys, and you helped with our first you know, with my first planning application basically. And we didn't end up proceeding with that project. But that was nothing to do with you know, with the guides. It's what happens in property sometimes, right? But because that process that I'd been through, like I think Elaine mentioned this in her Cortado as well, it's the lessons that you learn in doing that give you more confidence to go again. But I know categorically, if I wouldn't have had, you know, Tom, you as a guide alongside me at that point in time, I'd have just kept, you know, weaving, turning left and right, just not doing that whole planning permission thing. And maybe this is a me thing. Maybe when I'm doing a hard thing, maybe I do need a guide. Like, not everybody does. But I know that there are certain things when I'm doing things for the first time, I absolutely need a guide. But there are other ways when I've been doing something for the first time where I've felt I've not needed a guide, but I've still needed a different type of help. Because I want to make sure, you know, people involved get the best experience. So this is a non-property example, but we travel full time, and I kind of like had this idea at some point that we wanted to do a bit of a meetup with some of the traveling families at a part of the world that we really liked, but I did not have an appetite to organise that solo. You know, it's a big deal organising an event or organising a meetup with people that people are going to fly into, and I kind of had no appetite to do it myself for the first time. So in that example, I worked with somebody else who had a framework, who had done it absolutely loads of times. And I don't want to say franchise because it wasn't a franchise type of situation, but we worked with them. We followed their exact model, and we ended up hosting a week for other families, and like explored a new city in Malaysia together and made some good friendships along the way. So my point there is that, you know, when you're doing something new, sometimes you don't need a guide, and I know sometimes I don't need a guide. And in that instance, that sort of model of, you know, following someone else's roadmap, should we say, worked because how did it work? Why was it better than having like a guide? I think it just worked because other members of our family were involved, and really it just felt right for that situation. So coming back to this you know, gap, when we know there's something that we want to do, somewhere where we want to go, something that we need to achieve, it's important to figure out, you know, and just, I suppose, be aware of what that gap is. Because once you know what the gap is, then you can decide what type of help you need to close the gap, or how you're going to close the gap. And for me, that comes down to how much time I've got. You know, how much time do I want to put onto myself closing that gap versus have somebody else tell me what to do. Sometimes it comes down to the impact on others. So there've been times where I've taken on mentors and guides in my property business to do a new thing because, you know, I've been working with my partners and things like that, and I've just felt that I've wanted to have, you know, with the planning example, I've, you know, to serve my you know, partners in the best way, I've wanted to bring somebody else in to help with the knowledge gap. There's also the cost and the risks of mistakes as well, I found. You know, what's the impact of making a mistake? Like, if there's a low cost of making mistakes, then, you know, sometimes I'll kind of like try and figure out how to close that gap myself. But if there's a big risk and a big cost of making mistakes, then I'm probably more inclined to look at having somebody else come and help me. And sometimes it really comes down to the right person being available at the right time, who's done the thing that you need to do. I know when I was doing planning, it was just like, you know, Tom, you were there, like you were doing planning right there, right then. It was just like, okay, and you've done the thing. Like, I can take a shortcut, I can short circuit by just, you know, taking your help right now because you've done exactly the thing that I want to do, and that's why your help was so valuable. So yeah, I suppose to summarize, the way that I like close my knowledge gaps and, you know, get to a point, you know, to help me get to the point where I want to go to, sometimes I'll take no help and you know, figure it out ourselves. Sometimes we'll take a guide if you've not done, you know, not done the thing before, and there is somebody else available who has done that thing and who has got that experience. Sometimes it's appropriate to partner, you know, to partner with somebody else and to work with them on something, which is kind of like the model, I suppose, that we chose for this like family hub meetup thing that I'm talking about that we did in Malaysia. And sometimes, you know, it's a case of just like buying in the help, like having somebody else to do the thing, and just, you know, buy in buying that kind of help. But just the final to wrap this up, I suppose, what I found is when there's a gap there, like between where you are and where you want to be, if you don't find a way, or force yourself to find a way to close the gap, then you're just going to stay where you are and stay frustrated. And that's what I did for 7 years. I just didn't try and close the gap, and I just left it for 7 years, which, looking back now, I can't believe I let myself do that for 7 years. But I just allowed myself to get distracted with life and give myself lots of excuses. So that is my reflection and learning. I hope it's helpful.
Super, thanks, Julie. I've done well. I've done well at these latest ones. I'm getting loads of compliments. It's almost like I set people up who the two people I may have helped over the years. But so thank you very much indeed, both for the share and the kind words. The thing I think I'd advise anyone listening or watching this to do is write down on your to-do list or on your phone or wherever, what's my gap? Because I think most people have one, and then it can have an impact, because then you can consider that question. I think most people, including me, could answer quite quickly. There might be more than one, but okay, what's the biggest one? I'm trying to think what mine is, and I can't immediately bring it to mind. It might be growing this meeting. Might be that's something that I'd like to spend some more time, and I'd like to. I know I'm not a good marketer. I'm okay, but I'd want someone else to help me with it, and it's maybe something I've been putting off, not been finding the time for to help me to grow the meeting from an already amazing community to an even more amazing community. Get rid of all you lot and get some new people in, and so it's like maybe people watching, listening could do that exercise. Doesn't take very long, does it? And then go, okay, well, what do we need to do to get over that hurdle? And then this would have had a useful impact. So that I think that would be. I think both me and Julie would like that very much. So I think about it. Who do I know who can help you with that? Whether it's a guide, whether it's a partner, whether it's someone just with some knowledge and information. What's your gap at the moment, Julie?
Oh, that's a good question. Proper putting me on the spot there, Tom.
Thanks.
I think at the moment, I think at the moment for me, I and I said at the start, you're either continuously improving and refining and tweaking what you're doing, or you're looking that there's that thing that you want to do that's like a big leap ahead of you. And at the moment, for me, it's continuously improving and refining, and really that's because of our lifestyle and where we are and just how we're living. I find that we kind of want to, carry on living how we are at the moment, carry on with the time and location freedom that we've got. So because we're taking on more projects, we need to become more efficient, and we need to become leaner and look at our processes. So that's what I'm sort of like spending my time on at the moment. So is that a gap? I suppose it's just what I'm being intentional about doing at the moment. So not trying to take on something new that I've not done before, but refine and improve that so that we can do more but still keep our lifestyle freedom that we've got.
Super. Thank you very much for everyone listening. I want feedback on everyone's gap and what they've done to overcome it. That was a really useful Cortado, and catch everyone in the next one.